The first time I understood my marriage was over, my wife was laughing. Not the kind of laugh you share over coffee. Not the surprised giggle when something catches you off guard. This was different. This was the sound of someone who'd been holding back contempt for so long that when it finally escaped, it came out pure and clean and cruel. We were standing in our kitchen. Tuesday evening. I'd just mentioned that the quarterly property assessments were backing up at work, that I might need to pull a weekend shift. Standard conversation. The kind married people have 1,000 times. Mireya set down her wine glass with that particular precision she used when she wanted me to know I was being tedious. "Of course you are," she said, not looking at me, looking at her phone instead, thumbs moving across the screen. "That's very you, very dedicated, very replaceable." I remember the word specifically. Replaceable. It hung there between the granite countertop and the pendant lights we'd picked out together 3 years ago, when this house still felt like progress instead of a trap. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked. She looked up then, really looked at me for the first time in maybe weeks. Her eyes had that glossy brightness wine sometimes gave them, but underneath was something colder, something that had been there a while, just waiting for permission to show itself. "It means exactly what it sounds like, Alaric." She said my name the way you'd say a word you'd grown tired of repeating. "You assess commercial properties. You measure risks. You write reports. There are 10,000 guys in this city who do exactly what you do, exactly as well as you do it. Maybe better. I'm good at my job. You're adequate at your job." She picked up her glass again, swirled it. "And every day I'm more certain. You're not worthy of me." There it was, the line I'd remember later, the line that would play back in my head at 3 in the morning when sleep wouldn't come, the line that would eventually become the pivot point around which everything else turned. I didn't respond immediately. That was my pattern. I'd learned early in our marriage that arguing with Mireya when she was in this mood was like trying to reason with weather. You just waited it out and cleaned up the damage after. But this time I noticed something else. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and just for a second, her expression changed. Not softer exactly, but different. Private. Like she was having a separate conversation in her head with someone who wasn't me. "Who's that?" I asked. "Work. At 7:30 on a Tuesday?" She gave me a look that suggested I'd asked something incredibly stupid. "Marketing doesn't keep your hours, Alaric. Some of us have jobs that actually matter outside of 9 to 5. I nodded, backed off, went to the fridge for a beer I didn't particularly want. Behind me, I heard her typing. Fast. Urgent. The kind of typing you do when you're excited about something. The doorbell rang. Mireya's sister, Iris, let herself in before either of us could move. She had a key. She'd had a key since we bought the place. Mireya insisted. "Family," she'd said. "Support system." Iris swept into the kitchen trailing expensive perfume and carrying a leather portfolio I recognized from her interior styling work. She was shorter than Mireya, darker hair, but with the same sharp features. The same way of looking at you, like she was already 3 steps ahead in a conversation you didn't know you were having. "Am I interrupting?" she asked, in a tone that made it clear she knew she was and didn't particularly care. "Just Alaric having feelings about his workload," Mireya said. Light, dismissive, like I was a child complaining about homework. Iris glanced at me. Something flickered across her face. Not quite sympathy. More like interest. The way you look at something you've been told not to touch, but suddenly realize might be worth the risk. "Please," she said. "He deserves better than that." The room got very quiet. Mireya's expression shifted. Not embarrassed, irritated. Like Iris had said something off script. "Better than what?" Mireya asked. "Than being talked to like he's furniture." Iris set her portfolio on the counter between us, a physical barrier that somehow made the space feel more charged instead of less. Me, for example. It was said lightly, almost like a joke, but there was weight underneath, the kind of weight that changes the gravity in a room. Mireya laughed again, different this time, forced. Don't be ridiculous. I'm not being anything, Iris said. She looked at me directly. I'm just saying what's obvious. I didn't know what to do with that. Didn't know if I was supposed to laugh it off or address it seriously or pretend I hadn't heard it at all. So I did what I always did. I excused myself, grabbed my laptop, headed upstairs to the spare bedroom I'd started using as an office because it was easier than sharing space with Mireya's constant phone calls and strategic sighs. Behind me, I heard them talking, low voices. Mireya's sharp, Iris's softer but somehow more dangerous. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. I knew the tone. I'd heard it before in courtrooms when I was doing compliance work, in conference rooms during hostile negotiations. It was the sound of people who thought they were being careful but weren't being careful enough. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, stared at a spreadsheet I'd been working on for a building inspection downtown. Numbers that used to make sense but now just looked like data without meaning. My phone buzzed. Text from Noah Brent, my friend from the compliance office where I used to work before moving to private risk assessment. Drinks Thursday? Got something weird on a permit I want to run by you. I typed back, yeah. Usual place? 7 p.m. Don't be late. This one's a mess. I set the phone down, listened to the sounds downstairs. Laughter again, lighter now, the kind of laughter people have when they think they're alone or when they've forgotten someone might be listening. I opened a new tab on my browser, typed in a search I'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. Signs your wife is cheating. The results were predictable. Changes in routine, new interest in appearance, sudden privacy around phone and computer, unexplained absences, defensive behavior when questioned. I scrolled through them mechanically, checking off mental boxes like I was doing a property inspection. Foundation issues, structural concerns, risks that needed documentation. Then I stopped, closed the browser, because I realized I didn't need a checklist to tell me what I already knew. I needed proof. Not the kind of proof you get from hacking phones or hiring investigators. That was movie logic. That was the kind of thing that got you caught and made you look desperate and gave them ammunition to paint you as the crazy one. I needed the kind of proof that built itself, the kind that accumulated through simple observation, careful documentation, and patience, the kind of proof I'd been trained to gather my entire professional life. I pulled up a blank document, started typing. Tuesday, April 9th. 7:45 p.m. Mireya received urgent text during conversation. Claimed work. Expression indicated personal significance. Iris made provocative comment. Mireya's reaction suggested prior discussion about marriage status. Recent pattern. Increased evening absences. Claims related to campaign launches and client dinners. It felt cold typing it out like that. Clinical. Like I was assessing property damage instead of marriage collapse. But cold was good. Cold meant I could think. Cold meant I could plan. Downstairs, a door closed, Iris leaving. I heard Mireya's footsteps on the stairs, lighter than usual, almost bouncing. The walk of someone who'd just had a conversation that went exactly the way she wanted. She appeared in the doorway. Didn't knock. Hadn't knocked in months. Iris thinks we should redo the living room, she said. Something bolder, more modern. She says the current design is safe. Safe's not always bad, I said. Safe is boring. She leaned against the doorframe, studied me. Safe is what you settle for when you're too scared to want something better. Is that what you think? That I'm scared? I think you're comfortable. She said it like it was an indictment. I think you've decided this is good enough, and you're hoping I'll decide the same thing. And you haven't? She smiled. Same smile she'd given her phone earlier. Private, distant. No, she said. I really haven't. She left without waiting for a response. I heard her in our bedroom, Our bed, the door closing with that soft click that meant she was done with me for the night. I looked back at my document, added one more line. Mireya confirmed active dissatisfaction with marriage. Language suggests decision already made. I saved the file, encrypted it, backed it up to a private cloud server I used for sensitive work documents. Then I got up and walked to the window. Our house was on a quiet street in a neighborhood that had seemed like an achievement 5 years ago. Good schools nearby, low crime, property values rising, the kind of place people moved to when they thought they'd figured out the formula for success. I looked down at the driveway, empty now. Iris's car was gone, but I noticed something else. Fresh tire marks in the gravel shoulder across the street, wide set, the kind a truck would leave, the kind that would be there if someone had parked and waited, watched, checked to make sure the coast was clear. I stood there for a long time, watching the street, watching the shadows between streetlights, watching the spaces where someone could hide if they wanted to, and I realized something that should have scared me, but didn't. I wasn't surprised. I was ready. Thursday evening, I met Noah at Murphy's, a dive bar near the financial district where inspectors and contractors went to complain about developers and trade war stories about code violations. Dark wood, sticky floors, bartender who knew when to refill and when to leave you alone. Noah was already there, halfway through a whiskey, laptop open in front of him. He looked up when I slid into the booth across from him. "You look terrible," he said. "Thanks." "I mean it. When's the last time you slept? When's the last time you minded your own business?" He laughed, closed the laptop. "Fair enough. Want to tell me what's eating you, or should I guess?" "You said you had a permit issue." "I do, but that's not what this is about." He leaned back, studied me with the particular intensity he'd developed from years of finding problems other people missed. "Talk to me." I considered lying, considered saying everything was fine, redirecting to his permit problem, keeping my situation private the way I'd been trained to keep client information private. But I was tired of pretending, tired of performing normalcy for an audience that wasn't watching anyway. "How do you know when someone's lying to you?" I asked. "About what?" "About anything. Everything. How do you know when the whole thing is just performance?" Noah took a long drink, set his glass down carefully. "You want the professional answer or the friend answer?" "Both. Professional. You look for inconsistencies, stories that change, details that don't line up with documented facts, pattern breaks in behavior." He paused. "Friend answer? You already know. You just don't want to admit it yet because once you admit it, you have to do something about it." I nodded, ordered a beer from the waitress who materialized beside our table like she'd been waiting for exactly that moment. "Mireya's having an affair," I said. First time I'd said it out loud. The words tasted like metal. Noah didn't look surprised. "How sure are you?" 90%. "That's not good enough, not if you're planning to act on it." "I'm not planning anything." He gave me a look that suggested he knew I was lying. "What's the 10%? "No direct evidence, no photos, no texts, no confession, just patterns, changes, the way she looks at her phone, the way she talks to me versus the way she talks to whoever she's texting." I paused. "The way she laughs when she thinks I'm not paying attention." "Who is he?" "Don't know for sure, but I have a guess." Noah waited. "Guy named Mark Ravel, renovation consultant, works independently, does project management for building updates, compliance modifications. Mireya's company hired him 6 months ago to redesign their office space." "How'd you find out about him?" She mentioned him, more than once, always casual, always in passing, but the frequency was off. You don't mention someone that often unless they're occupying real estate in your head. Noah nodded slowly. "You run his background?" "Enough to know he exists. Mid-30s. Used to work for a larger firm. Went independent 3 years ago. Does good work from what I can tell. Keeps his projects on schedule. Has connections with city inspectors. I met Noah's eyes. Probably knows some of the same people you do. Want me to ask around? No, I don't want this tied back to me. Not yet. So what's your plan? Document, watch, confirm. Build a case that doesn't rely on anything illegal or invasive. That takes time. I have time. Does she know you suspect? No, and she won't. Not until I'm ready. Noah leaned forward. Listen to me. If you're going to do this, you need to be smart about it. No hacking, no tracking devices, no confrontations until you're certain. And when you are certain, you get a lawyer before you do anything else. Understand? Understood. I mean it, Alaric. I've seen guys go down this road. The ones who survive are the ones who stay cold. The ones who lose it are the ones who let emotion drive tactics. I'm not going to lose it. He looked at me for a long moment. Yeah, he said finally. That's what scares me. We talked about his permit issue after that. Some developer trying to rush a conversion on a historic building, cutting corners on safety requirements, pressuring inspectors to overlook deficiencies. Standard corruption, standard pushback. Noah wanted my read on the structural risks, whether the shortcuts were cosmetic or catastrophic. I walked him through it. Load-bearing walls, fire suppression systems, emergency egress, the things you couldn't fake, the things that showed up in every inspection if you knew where to look. Thanks, he said when I finished. You always were better at seeing the weak points. It's what I do. Yeah? He closed his laptop, finished his drink. Just remember, weak points go both ways. You push too hard in the wrong place, the whole thing comes down. I'll remember. We left separately. I walked to my car, drove home through streets that felt different now. Sharper, more defined. Like someone had adjusted the contrast on reality, and suddenly I could see details I'd been missing. The house was dark when I arrived. Mireya's car was in the driveway, but the lights were off downstairs. I checked my watch, 9:40. Early for her to be asleep. I let myself in quietly, stood in the entryway listening. No television, no music, no sound at all except the mechanical hum of the refrigerator and the house settling around its foundation. I climbed the stairs slowly. Our bedroom door was closed, light visible underneath. I heard water running. Shower. I went to my office, sat at my desk, pulled up the encrypted file I'd started Tuesday night, added new entries. Thursday, April 11th. Discussed situation with Noah Brent. Confirmed approach. Documentation without illegal surveillance. Target individual, Mark Ravel, independent contractor. Mireya's company project. Mentioned frequently in casual conversation over past 6 months. Pattern analysis. Increased evening absences correlate with project timeline. 3 dinners claimed as client meetings in past 2 weeks. No calendar entries visible on shared family calendar. I paused, opened a new browser window. Found Mark Ravel's business website, professional, clean, photos of completed projects, testimonials from satisfied clients, contact information. I studied his photo, decent looking, confident smile, the kind of guy who probably did well at networking events, the kind of guy who made people feel comfortable trusting him with their buildings and their budgets. I memorized his face. Then I cleared my browser history and closed the window. The shower had stopped. I heard Mireya moving around the bedroom, drawers opening, closet door sliding. The ritualistic sounds of someone preparing for something. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Hi, Alaric. This is Iris. Got your number from Mireya's phone. Hope that's okay. Wanted to apologize if I made things awkward Tuesday. That wasn't my intention. I stared at the message, reread it 3 times. Several things were wrong with it. First, Iris asking for my number instead of just asking me directly. Second, the apology that didn't sound apologetic. Third, the timing, right after I'd confirmed my suspicions about Mireya. I typed back, "No problem, already forgotten." Her response came immediately. "Good. I'd hate for things to be weird between us, especially now. Especially now." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then, just meant with everything going on. Mireya seems stressed. I worry about her. She seems fine to me. Does she? I didn't answer that. Instead, I asked, "When did you grab my number? Does it matter? Just curious. Few days ago." I was thinking about what I said. Thought maybe we should talk sometime, without Mireya around. I set the phone down, stared at it like it might explain itself. This was new territory. Iris had always been friendly but distant. Mireya's sister. Part of the package. Someone who showed up for holidays and occasional dinners but stayed in her lane. This wasn't staying in her lane. I picked up the phone again. Typed, "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because you're her sister. Because whatever's happening here doesn't need to get more complicated. What if it's already complicated?" I didn't answer. She didn't push. After 5 minutes, I locked my phone and put it face down on the desk. The bedroom door opened. Mireya appeared in the hallway, backlit from behind. She was dressed, not pajamas, real clothes, jeans, nice shirt, hair done. "Going somewhere?" I asked. "Iris needs help with a staging project, client emergency. I'll be back late." "It's almost 10. "It's a client emergency, Alaric. Some of us can't just clock out and forget about work until morning." "You want me to come?" She laughed, not the cruel laugh from Tuesday. Something lighter, but somehow worse. Pitying. "No," she said. "I definitely don't want you to come." She left. I heard her heels on the stairs, the front door, her car starting, the sound of tires on pavement fading into distance. I sat very still, thought about Iris's texts, thought about Mireya's sudden emergency, thought about the fact that both women were now actively lying to me in coordinated ways. Then I stood up, grabbed my keys, walked downstairs and out to my car. I didn't follow Mireya. That was amateur hour. Instead, I drove to the address listed on Mark Ravel's website, Commercial District. Older building converted to mixed use, ground floor businesses, residential above. His truck was parked on the street, same wide-set tires I'd seen in the gravel across from our house. I parked 3 blocks away, walked back, found a coffee shop with windows facing his building, ordered something I wouldn't drink and sat where I could see. 40 minutes later, Mireya's car pulled up. She got out, checked her phone, looked around with the particular caution of someone who thinks they're being clever. Then she walked to the side entrance and disappeared inside. I waited. 20 minutes after that, Iris's car appeared. She parked behind Mireya's. Same routine, same cautious scan of the street, same door. I sat there until midnight. Neither of them came out. Neither of their cars moved. Finally, I left, drove home, let myself into the dark house, went upstairs to my office and added one more entry to my file. Thursday, April 11th, 11:47 p.m. Confirmed. Both Mireya and Iris visited Mark Ravel's residence. Neither departed before midnight. Purpose unclear. Relationship structure unclear. Further observation required. Then I locked the file, turned off my computer, sat in the dark, and I started planning. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay in the guest room I'd been using more and more frequently, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows crawl across the plaster as car headlights swept past outside. My mind was working through scenarios, testing variables, building blueprints the way I'd been trained to assess buildings. Start with the foundation, work your way up, identify the points that would fail under pressure. By morning, I had a plan. Not complete, not foolproof, but sufficient. Mireya came home at 6:15. I heard her car, heard her footsteps trying to be quiet, heard the shower running in our bathroom. When she finally emerged, I was in the kitchen making coffee, like this was any other Friday morning. "You're up early," she said. Casual, Testing. Couldn't sleep. Bad dreams? Something like that. She poured herself coffee, stood with her back to me, looking out the window at the yard we'd once planned to renovate together. "I'm going to need you to be less clingy," she said, not turning around. "This thing where you're always present. It's suffocating. I live here. You know what I mean. I really don't." She turned then, studied me with that particular expression she'd developed recently, part irritation, part assessment, like she was calculating whether I was worth the energy of a real conversation. "I need space," she said. "I need you to stop hovering and questioning and acting like I owe you a minute-by-minute breakdown of my day. We're married, not fused." I asked where you were going. "Once, that's hardly hovering. It's the tone, the implication, like you're keeping tabs." I sipped my coffee, let the silence stretch. Then, "Okay, okay, okay. You want space? You've got it. I'll stop asking questions." She looked surprised, then suspicious. "Just like that?" "Just like that." She waited for the catch, the condition, the passive-aggressive complaint. When none came, she nodded slowly. "Good. That's good." She left for work 20 minutes later. I waited until her car was gone, then I called in sick to my office. First time in 3 years. My supervisor was so surprised he forgot to ask what was wrong. I spent the morning doing research, not on Mireya, on Mark. His business records were public. Permits, inspections, project completions. I pulled everything I could find through legitimate channels. No hacking, no illegal access, just the kind of deep background checking that was part of my professional toolkit. Mark was good at his job, that much was clear. Projects finished on time, inspections passed, clients happy. But there were small things, minor violations corrected after initial inspection, a few projects where safety protocols had been questioned. Nothing catastrophic, nothing that would tank his reputation, but enough to suggest he occasionally cut corners when he thought he could get away with it. By noon, I had what I needed. By 2, I was parked outside the building where Mark was currently working, a commercial renovation downtown, converting old warehouse space into modern offices. I'd pulled the permits that morning, knew the timeline, knew the inspection schedule, knew where the weak points were. I waited until 5:30. Workers started leaving, contractors packing up. The site wouldn't be empty, never was on active projects, but it would be quiet. Skeleton crew for evening work. Mark's truck stayed put. I watched him through the ground floor windows, moving between spaces with that particular confidence contractors develop, measuring, checking, making notes on a tablet. At 6, most of the crew was gone, just Mark and one electrician working on something in the back. I gave it 15 more minutes. Then I got out of my car and walked to the entrance. The door was unlocked. Construction sites always are during active hours. I let myself in, moved through the space like I belonged there. Hard hat from a rack near the entrance, clipboard I'd brought with me, the universal costume of someone who's supposed to be there. I found Mark on the 3rd floor. He was alone now, the electrician apparently finished and gone. He looked up when he heard my footsteps, smiled that easy contractor smile. "Help you?" he asked. "Alaric Voss, property risk assessment. Just need to check some clearance measurements for the insurance documentation." Professional. Boring. The kind of thing that happens on construction sites constantly. Mark's smile didn't waver, but I watched his eyes. Watched them track to my face, my clothes, my badge ID I'd deliberately clipped to my belt. "Didn't hear about an insurance inspection," he said. "Just preliminary, making sure everything's documented properly before final occupancy." I glanced at my clipboard. "You're Mark Ravel, right? Project manager?" "That's me." "Good. You'll want to see this." I walked past him to the emergency stairwell, tested the door. It stuck, took pressure to open. I turned back to Mark. "This is interesting," I said. "What is?" "Egress door. Resistance is about 30 pounds of force. Code requires maximum 15 for emergency exits. I made a note on my clipboard. When's your next safety inspection? Mark's smile had gotten thinner. Tuesday. Might want to fix this before then. I moved to the window bank. Checked the seals. Found hairline cracks in 2 panes. Made more notes. These are new installations? I asked. Last month. Thermal stress fractures already forming. That's usually installation error. Weight distribution wrong during setting. I glanced at him. That your crew or subcontractor? Subcontractor. Might want to document that. Liability issues if these fail during occupancy. I kept moving, kept finding problems. Small ones. The kind that wouldn't fail an inspection but would raise questions, would require explanations, would create paper trails. Mark was following me now. The smile was gone. Listen, he said. I don't know what this is, but this is an assessment, standard procedure. Bullshit. I know standard procedure. This is something else. I stopped, turned to face him directly. We were alone on the 3rd floor of an empty building, just us and the shadows and the ambient noise of traffic filtering up from the street below. You're right, I said. This is something else. He took a step back, instinctive. What do you want? I want you to understand something. I kept my voice level. Calm, the tone I'd use discussing structural load limits. I know who you are, I know what you do, I know where you work, where you live, where you park your truck. I know your inspection schedules, your permit limitations, your client list. Are you threatening me? I'm giving you context, because context matters. You make decisions, Mark, every day. Where to cut corners, who to trust, what risks are worth taking. I paused. I want you to understand that some risks aren't worth it. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. He looked at the stairwell door, calculating. I watched him measure the distance, assess whether he could get past me, work through his options in real time. The door sticks, I said. Remember? 30 pounds of force. You could probably force it, but it would take effort, time, and I'd be right behind you. You're insane. I'm practical. There's a difference. I stepped aside, gestured to the stairs. Go ahead, leave, but understand that this conversation isn't over. It's just beginning. Mark moved past me quickly. Not quite running, not quite walking, somewhere in between. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard the door slam 2 floors down, heard his truck start 30 seconds later and tires squealing as he pulled away. I stood alone in the empty space, pulled out my phone, took photos of every deficiency I'd found, time-stamped, documented. Then I left, walked to my car, drove home. Mireya was waiting when I got there, standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, phone in her hand. Where were you? She demanded. Out, Mark called. Said someone was harassing him at his job site, asking weird questions, making threats. Did he say who? He said it was you. I set my keys on the counter, walked to the refrigerator, grabbed a beer, opened it slowly. That's ridiculous, I said. Is it? I don't know anyone named Mark. I took a drink. Though you mention him a lot, maybe you should ask yourself why you're so concerned about someone I've supposedly never met. Her expression changed. Just slightly. A crack in the performance. This isn't funny, she said. I agree. It's not. I walked past her, stopped in the doorway. You said you wanted space. I'm giving you space. What you do with that space isn't my concern anymore. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done pretending I don't notice things. Done pretending I don't see patterns. Done being the safe option you settled for while you figure out what you actually want. Alaric, I'm going upstairs. You're going to do whatever you were planning to do tonight, and we're both going to stop lying about what's happening here. I left her in the kitchen, climbed the stairs, heard her making a phone call behind me. Low, urgent conversation I didn't try to listen to. In my office, I opened my encrypted file, added new entries, Documented everything. The confrontation at the site. Mark's reaction. Mireya's immediate defense of him. Then I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. The first move was made, the first fear planted. Mark now knew he was visible, vulnerable, that someone was watching who knew how to find weak points, and Mireya knew I wasn't performing anymore. The foundation was cracking. Now I just had to wait for the pressure to build. Saturday morning, Iris showed up unannounced. Again, she had that gift. I was in the garage, sorting through old project files, when she walked in through the side door like she lived there. She was wearing yoga clothes and looked like she'd just come from a class, but her eyes were too sharp for someone who'd spent the morning in downward-facing dog. "We need to talk," she said. "Does Mireya know you're here?" "Mireya's at the salon, 3-hour appointment, highlights and something called a gloss treatment that costs more than your car payment." She leaned against my workbench. "So no, she doesn't know." "What do you want, Iris?" "I want to know what you're doing." "Spring cleaning." "Don't be cute. Mark called Mireya last night. Freaked out. Said you showed up at his job site and basically threatened him." "I didn't threaten anyone. I conducted a professional assessment and found multiple code deficiencies. That's my job." "That's not what happened, and we both know it." I set down the file box I'd been holding. Turned to face her fully. "Okay. Then what do you think happened?" She studied me. I watched her working through it, trying to figure out what I knew, what I suspected, what I could prove. She was good at reading people. Had to be, in her line of work, but she'd never had to read me before. I'd always been background noise in her interactions with Mireya, the husband, the fixture, the person you acknowledge but don't examine too closely. "I think you know," she said finally. "Know what?" "About Mireya and Mark." There it was, clean, direct, no dancing around it. "How long have you known?" I asked. 3 months, maybe 4. She crossed her arms. I tried to talk her out of it. "Did you?" "Yes. Believe it or not, I actually like you, Alaric. You're decent, stable, not exciting but not terrible either." She paused. "Mireya disagrees." "So, I've noticed. She thinks you're holding her back, thinks she's settled, thinks there's some better version of her life waiting if she just has the courage to reach for it. And what do you think? I think she's confusing boredom with enlightenment. I think Mark is convenient and flattering and temporary, and she's dumb enough to mistake that for meaningful." Iris pushed off the workbench, moved closer. "I also think you're smarter than you pretend to be, and whatever you're planning scares me." "I'm not planning anything." "Liar." I smiled. Couldn't help it. "Yeah, I'm a liar. Funny how that works. Listen to me." She dropped her voice. "If you're thinking about revenge, about making a scene, about trying to ruin her, don't. It won't go the way you think. Mireya has friends, resources. She's been building her case for months. Her case. That you're controlling, paranoid, possibly unstable. She's been documenting things, conversations, arguments. She's been preparing for this." I absorbed that, turned it over, examined the angles. "When were you going to tell me?" I asked. "I wasn't. That's not my role. But you're telling me now. Because I don't want anyone to get hurt. Not really hurt, not permanently." She touched my arm, light, almost apologetic. "There's a way out of this that doesn't destroy everyone. You can walk away clean, get a divorce, split things reasonably, move on. That's Mireya's offer? That's my suggestion. What if I don't want clean? What if I want consequences?" Iris's expression shifted. Something like recognition, like she'd just confirmed a suspicion. "Then you're going to lose," she said quietly. "Because she's already 3 moves ahead, and you're still pretending you don't know how to play." She left after that, walked back out the way she came. I stood in the garage for a long time, listening to the house settle, thinking about what she'd said. Mireya was documenting, building a case, preparing to paint me as unstable. That was interesting. That was useful. That meant she saw me as a potential threat instead of a harmless obstacle. It meant I was winning. I pulled out my phone, texted Noah. Need to ask you about someone. Project manager with history of code issues. How hard would it be to trigger a full safety review on his current jobs? Noah responded 15 minutes later. Depends. What kind of issues? Minor stuff, but pattern-based, multiple projects, same corners getting cut. If it's pattern-based, inspectors will look harder. Could freeze permits pending review? Why? Professional curiosity. Right. And I'm Santa. When you're ready to tell me what this is really about, call me. I didn't call. Instead, I spent the afternoon pulling everything I could find on Mark's project history. Not just the completed jobs. The pending ones. The ones waiting for inspections. The ones where a few pointed questions from the right inspector could turn routine approval into extended review. I made a list, cross-referenced it with Noah's jurisdiction and his colleagues' jurisdictions, found 3 projects where a compliance review could legitimately be triggered by anonymous professional concern. Then I drafted 3 separate reports. Different language, different focuses, all technically accurate, all completely legal, all absolutely devastating if they landed on the right desks. I didn't send them yet. Timing mattered. Mireya came home at 4. New hair, new attitude. She walked past the garage without acknowledging me, went straight upstairs. I heard her on the phone. Long conversation. Laughter that sounded performative, calculated. At 6, she came back down, dressed for evening, makeup flawless. Going out? I asked. Yes. Where? Does it matter? Just curious. Don't be. She grabbed her purse, paused at the door. Iris talked to you. Not a question. A statement. She did, I said. And? And nothing. She made some interesting points. Like what? Like that you've been preparing for this, documenting, building evidence that I'm unstable. I looked at her directly. That true? She smiled. That new smile. The private one. I'm protecting myself. From what? From whatever version of you shows up when you finally figure out you've already lost. She left. I listened to her car disappear down the street. Then I went upstairs to my office and opened my laptop, sent all 3 reports, 2 to city inspectors Noah had mentioned in the past, 1 to a state compliance officer who handled contractor licensing reviews. Anonymous, untraceable, professionally worded, each one landing on a desk where it would trigger the exact kind of bureaucratic scrutiny that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. I imagined Mark's phone ringing over the next week, imagined him trying to explain why multiple projects suddenly required additional inspection, imagined his clients asking questions, imagined his calendar filling up with remediation work and compliance meetings instead of new jobs. Then I closed my laptop and went downstairs. The house was quiet, empty. I stood in the kitchen where Mireya had laughed at me 6 days ago, where this had started, where I'd stopped being the safe option and started being something else. My phone buzzed. Text from Iris. What did you do? I didn't respond. 3 minutes later, Alaric. Whatever you just did, undo it, please. Still nothing from me. Then, she's going to destroy you. You know that, right? You think you're being clever, but you're just making it worse. I typed back. Tell her I'm looking forward to it. Deleted the message. Sent instead. I didn't do anything. But if something happens, maybe she should ask herself who she's been trusting. I turned off my phone, made dinner, ate alone, cleaned up, went to bed early. And somewhere across town, in Mark Ravel's apartment, I imagined a man who was just beginning to understand that his life was about to get very complicated. Not because of anything violent. Not because of anything illegal. Just because I'd decided to stop being invisible. Tuesday afternoon, everything came apart. I was at my actual job, something I hadn't abandoned despite the weekend's activities, reviewing structural assessments for a proposed retail conversion, when my phone started blowing up. Not calls, texts, from numbers I recognized and numbers I didn't. First was Noah. What the hell did you do? Then a number I didn't know. This is Mark. We need to talk. Now. Then Iris. Call me immediately. Then Mireya. Come home. I finished the report I was writing, saved it, closed my laptop, told my supervisor I had a family emergency, drove home through traffic that felt surreal in its normalcy. People commuting, radio playing, the world continuing like nothing was different. Mireya's car was in the driveway. So was Iris's, and Mark's truck. I parked on the street, walked to the house, let myself in. They were in the living room, all three of them. Mireya on the couch, Iris standing by the window, Mark pacing. They all turned when I entered. You need to fix this, Mark said immediately. Whatever you did, whoever you talked to, I have no idea what you're talking about. 3 projects, 3 separate compliance reviews, all triggered in the last 48 hours, all asking the same questions about my work. His face was red, stressed. That's not coincidence. Sounds like you have quality control issues. I have someone sabotaging my business. Do you have proof of that? He started toward me. Iris stepped between us. Everyone calm down, she said. This isn't helping. He's destroying my reputation, Mark said. I could lose my license. I could lose everything. Then maybe you should have been more careful about code compliance. I looked past him to Mireya. Is there a reason we're all here? Because we need to clear the air, she said. Her voice was controlled, too controlled. The way people sound when they're working very hard to maintain composure. This has gotten out of hand. What has? This thing between you and Mark, this vendetta. I don't have a vendetta. I barely know the man. Stop lying. She stood up. I know you know. Iris told me she told you, so stop pretending you're innocent in this. Iris told you she told me what? Mireya glanced at her sister. Something passed between them. An entire conversation in a look. That Mark and I are seeing each other, Mireya said. That we've been seeing each other. That this marriage is over. There it was, finally, out loud. No more dancing. Okay, I said. Okay? She looked thrown. That's it? That's your response? What do you want me to say? You've been planning this for months. You've been documenting my behavior, building your case that I'm unstable. You've been sharing a bed with someone else while pretending to share one with me. I looked at Mark. And you've been stupid enough to think there wouldn't be consequences. The only consequences are the ones you're creating, Mark said. I didn't do anything illegal. Neither did I. I filed legitimate professional concerns about code violations on multiple projects. That's my job. That's what I'm trained to do. If those concerns trigger reviews, that's the system working exactly as designed. You're using your professional position to harass me. Prove it. He couldn't. We both knew it. Everything I'd done was technically legitimate, anonymous but proper. There was no paper trail connecting me to the reports, no evidence beyond his suspicion. This is insane, Mireya said. You're being vindictive and petty and... Effective? I suggested. Precise? Strategic? I walked further into the room. You said I wasn't worthy of you. You said I was replaceable. You laughed at me in my own home. You made it very clear that I didn't matter. So you're punishing me by ruining Mark's career? I'm not ruining anything. I'm just making sure everyone sees what they've been too trusting to notice. I turned to Mark. How many times have you cut corners? How many projects have passed inspection because you were charming or lucky or knew the right people? How many times have you gambled with safety because the deadline was tight or the client was impatient? He didn't answer. I thought so. I looked back at Mireya. You chose someone who takes shortcuts, who prioritizes convenience over integrity, who thinks he's smarter than the systems designed to protect people. Is that really an upgrade? You don't get to judge. I'm not judging. I'm observing. And what I'm observing is that you traded something stable for something exciting, and now you're discovering that excitement has costs. What do you want? Iris asked. She'd been quiet until now. Seriously, Alaric, what's the endgame here? I want everyone to stop lying. I want everyone to stop pretending this is anything other than what it is. I want consequences that match actions. Revenge, you mean? Justice. That's not your decision to make, isn't it? You said Mireya was 3 moves ahead, that I was already losing, but look around, Iris. Who's losing right now? Mark's phone rang. He looked at it, declined the call. It rang again immediately. You should probably answer that, I said. Could be important. He answered it, listened. His face went pale. When? He asked. Then. How did they? Then. I'll call you back. He hung up, looked at Mireya. The state licensing board. They're opening a formal review. Multiple complaints. They're suspending my permits pending investigation. That's not possible, she said. It just happened. I felt something in my chest. Not quite satisfaction. Not quite vindication. Something colder. Something that felt like watching a structure fail exactly where you predicted it would fail. You need to fix this, Mark said to me. Call them. Tell them it was a mistake. I can't fix something I didn't break. You destroyed my business. I reported code violations. If reporting violations destroys your business, that says more about your business than it does about me. He moved toward me again. Faster this time. Iris tried to intercept, but he pushed past her, got right in my face, close enough that I could smell his sweat, his fear. You're going to regret this, he said. Probably, but not today. He shoved me, not hard, just enough to make a point, enough to establish that he wasn't helpless. I didn't shove back, didn't need to. Assault, I said quietly. In front of witnesses, in my own home. After I documented your pattern of safety violations, and you responded with physical intimidation. I looked at Iris. You saw that, right? She closed her eyes. Please stop. I did stop. He started. Mark was breathing hard, looking at his hands like they'd betrayed him, looking at Mireya like she could fix this. We're leaving, she said. All of us. We're leaving, and you're going to stay here, and you're going to think very carefully about what happens next. What happens next is that you file for separation, you get a lawyer, we divide assets. Mark rebuilds his business somewhere that isn't here, and eventually this becomes a story everyone tells about what happens when you mistake contempt for confidence. I never had contempt for you. You laughed at me, you told me I wasn't worthy. You brought your sister into this as some kind of witness to how reasonable you were being while systematically dismantling our marriage. I paused. You had nothing but contempt. She started to say something, stopped, started again. I didn't want it to be like this. Yes, you did. You wanted me to be passive and understanding and forgiving. You wanted to have your affair and your moral high ground, and your story about how you'd outgrown someone who couldn't keep up. The only thing you didn't want was consequences. And you're giving me consequences. I'm giving you honesty. There's a difference. They left after that. Mark first, practically running to his truck. Then Iris, pausing at the door to look back at me with something like pity or fear or both. Finally, Mireya. She stood in the doorway, keys in hand, face unreadable. You used to be kind, she said. I used to be convenient. I loved you once. Maybe, but not enough to be honest with me, not enough to be decent, not enough to do anything except wait until you had something better and then act surprised when I noticed. She left without responding. I watched through the window as they gathered on the driveway, watched them talk in tight, urgent clusters, watched Mark gesture angrily, watched Mireya try to calm him, watched Iris looking back at the house like she expected something to explode. Then they dispersed. 3 cars pulling away in different directions. 3 people who'd walked into my house thinking they were in control and left, knowing they weren't. I stood in the empty living room. The house was silent again. Just me and the furniture we'd picked out together and the life we'd built that turned out to be less durable than anyone expected. My phone buzzed. Text from Noah. I heard. Multiple sources saying you triggered those reviews. Want to tell me what's really going on? I typed, just doing my job. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Then, be careful. People are asking questions. Let them ask. I turned off my phone, walked upstairs, stood in the bedroom I'd shared with Mireya until I'd stopped being able to pretend I didn't notice her phone lighting up at midnight with messages she wouldn't explain. Her things were still here. Closet full of clothes, dresser covered with jewelry and perfume, the material evidence of a life she was preparing to abandon but hadn't quite left yet. I didn't touch anything, didn't move anything, just looked at it all with the particular detachment that comes when something that mattered stops mattering. Then I went to my office, opened my encrypted file, read through everything I'd documented, every entry, every observation, every piece of evidence I'd gathered systematically over the past week. It looked different now, less like detective work, more like archaeology, the excavation of something that was already gone, just waiting for someone to dig it up and confirm the dimensions. I added one final entry. Tuesday, April 16th, 6:47 p.m., direct confrontation with all parties. Mark's business facing formal review. Mireya acknowledged affair openly. Physical intimidation by Mark witnessed by Iris Vale. All parties departed. Marriage effectively concluded. I saved the file, backed it up, encrypted it again. Then I closed my laptop and sat in the dark office, watching the sun set through the window, watching shadows lengthen across the desk where I'd planned this whole thing. And I realized something that should have felt like victory, but mostly felt like exhaustion. I'd won, not because I'd destroyed them, not because I'd gotten revenge in any dramatic sense, but because I'd stopped being invisible. I'd stopped accepting the version of reality they'd constructed where I was convenient and replaceable and unworthy. I'd made them see me, made them understand that actions have weight, that contempt has consequences, that you can't treat someone like furniture and expect them to stay politely in place while you rearrange the room. Downstairs, my phone started ringing. Mireya. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Iris this time. Voicemail. Again. Noah. I considered answering, decided against it. The phone finally went quiet. I sat in that silence for a long time, long enough for the streetlights to come on outside, long enough for the house to settle into its evening sounds, long enough to understand that this was the moment where one version of my life ended and another began. Not dramatically, not with explosions or declarations or scenes that would play well in someone else's story. Just quietly, inevitably. The way buildings fail when you've correctly identified the structural weakness and applied exactly the right amount of pressure to the exact place that couldn't withstand it. I'd been trained to find weak points. Turned out I was good at exploiting them too.